equal opportunities. I mean, I think that's really important as we
faith and politics, a lot of what our work that brings us together is service. Faith and politics, a lot of what our work that brings us together. We should look at carrying faith and politics, a lot of what our work that brings us together.
Can you say you captured why did the girl ask the mushrooms to dance? Because everybody goes. When you come up being nosedive, pork chop must have We'll be right back.
Politics, a lot of what our work that brings us together.
Can you say you captured why did we told to bring the mushrooms to dance? Because everybody goes. When you come up being nosedive, pork chop must have We'll be right back.
Politics, a lot of what our work that brings us together.
Can you say you captured why did we told to bring the mushrooms to dance? Because everybody goes. When you come up being nosedive, pork chop must have We'll be right back.
Politics, a lot of what our work that brings us together.
Can you say you captured why did we told to bring the mushrooms to dance? Because everybody goes. When you come up being nosedive, pork chop must have We'll be right back.
Politics, a lot of what our work that brings us together.
Can you say you captured why did we told to bring the mushrooms to dance?
welcome back to the Insight. I'm your host, and tonight we're continuing our conversation with Joan, president of
Politics, a lot
and
of
Joan,
what our
we
work
loved
that
last
brings us
segment. We
together.
were really talking about
Why did we told to bring the mushrooms to dance?
experiences are nearly as secure as Dr. Joan contaminated heart. Welcome back to our nearly as secure as Dr. Joan contaminated heart. Welcome back to our nearly as secure as Dr. Welcome back to nearly as secure as welcome back to nearly as secure as welcome back to nearly as secure as yes. 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 Welcome back to
Why we keep doing these weekend events, the monthly and the biweekly and weekly reflections, is if you don't pay attention to it daily, pretty soon it won't be a priority. So it is that task, that habit of reinforcing our mindsets. Once in a lifetime pilgrimages are amazing, but it's really that daily work at the forge where we're going to get results.
And to think about the courage that it took with a small little girl. I mean, that's inspiring to all of us. I mean, if a small little girl can have that much courage, right? I mean, just think if we embodied that inspiration, the changes that we could make in our country and in our communities each and every day.
Yes, and I think that's what's so unusual about the American freedom movement, as the civil rights icons would call it, because it wasn't really about civility for them. It was about everybody being treated equally and for freedom and justice for all. I think the way they look at it is it's a necessary thing to do, that without it, change would never have happened.
Right. Well, please stay with us. We're going to continue our conversation with Joan Mooney and talk about where we go from here. How do we get to a better place? Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
I surrender, I surrender.
All right, pal. Get ready for the day, buddy.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
What's that?
Do we have a gun?
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made this vacation happen.
Double points with every purchase?
Cleverly merging promotions.
Love it.
Cross-referencing travel sites. And booking all your flights with those...
Vouchers. I got us bumped.
They were like, oh. But now they're like... you aced this vacation. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
I tried Oxy at a couple of parties. I thought I had it under control. I didn't know it'd be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
What to expect when you're expecting
Like here.
a teenager.
Today, I'm going to show you how to team-proof your home. First step, hide the car keys. Preferably somewhere they would never look. Challenges will come up. Be ready for them. Hi, honey.
I'm ready for the... Mom, you don't use mannequins in the mannequin challenge.
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and we're continuing our conversation with Joan Mooney, the president and CEO of the Faith and Politics Institute. And Joan, as we were finishing the last segment, you were talking about how powerful so many of the historical lessons that you're able to experience on these pilgrimages are for people. They're transformative in so many ways. And you talked a little bit about, yes, these moments are important, but it's also really important what happens afterwards. Mm-hmm. So where do we go from there? Where do we go as we move forward?
I think as a nation, we have to learn to go against the grain of siloing ourselves to only people who think and act like us. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we need to learn how to get proximate with difference, with people who think differently, who act differently, who may come from different places. This is a melting pot, e pluribus unum, out of many one. We don't have to assimilate, but we do all have to get along together. We weave together a rich tapestry with all of our differences, but the only way we learn that is if you look on your Facebook feed and everyone thinks like you don't have a broad enough repertoire to be a good citizen. You've got to learn other people's viewpoints. You've got to reach out to people who are different than you. Otherwise, we're going to be in the stalemate and fighting forever.
Mm-hmm. That discomfort, too, that you talked about, that's really where the growth and the change occur, right? It is that place of discomfort. It's where those conversations start. It's where those relationships begin, and how important it is for us to really force ourselves to get into those discomfortable places.
Well, after, Dr. King would say, after negotiation and everything, you get into direct action, which is really creating a creative tension to engage with one another when everything may be at a stalemate.
Well, one of the things, and you've talked quite a bit about Congressman John Lewis, and I know he has a prominent role in your organization, but one of the things I love when I hear John Lewis talk about good trouble. Can you explain a little bit about good trouble and what that means and why good trouble is important right now?
Well, I think too often, and Dr. King said this in his letter from a Birmingham jail and throughout his speeches, is worse than an opponent is a lukewarm friend who isn't there when you really need them there. John Lewis talks about when you see something that's wrong, speak up, speak out, work to change it, don't let it pass. If we're all in this together, pointing out what we need to do to become a more perfect union, then it will become perfected then. So when he talks about good trouble, necessary trouble, he talks about his parents told him, stay out of trouble, but he saw things that were not right, and he has worked his whole life to make things right. And so that is getting into good trouble, necessary trouble.
Yes. Well, in good trouble, we need that right now. Because one of the things Dr. King said that was so incredibly powerful is injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I think that really speaks to the importance of speaking up and speaking out and getting into that good trouble when you see there's something that needs to change in your community and also in your country.
Well, when you look at the history and we think about Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama, you think about then Dr. King going down and ultimately issuing a call to action to the nation for people to come down. People of varying faiths, clergy members, people from all across the nation, indeed across the world, came to join the march. So when you see something, say something, and that is what will draw attention and get change for it.
What are some of the things that our viewers that are tuning in this evening or will watch the show later on, what are some of the things that we can all do to help create the necessary change needed in our communities and our country right now?
It really is as simple as being open and engaged with other people and in not giving up. I think we talked about democracy being a conversation, right? Well, a conversation is more than two intersecting monologues. If I'm listening to you only to be able to reply rather than to seek to understand, then we really haven't had a conversation. I haven't come to understand what your viewpoint is. Listening is the most undervalued skill. We're quick to issue our viewpoint and command control of a conversation. And we're slow to listen and to allow somebody else to have control. But if you go back to Dr. King's principle of nonviolence, it's to do research on your opponent, to get to know how they feel and what they think, and then how your views, you might be able to find some common ground there. So look for the good that comes out of someone else. Try to emphasize the positive, the good, and then work to build from there.
So it's as simple as starting these conversations, and as you said, not just starting them, but continuing that dialogue and continuing that quest for understanding as we move forward.
Sure, and I talked about some of the work that we do. We do work with congressional staff as well. And over time, people don't know each other at the staff level either, and they may get in their Democratic or Republican silo or only with their delegation. And so we try to do work that brings people together through service projects. If you have a habit and you stay in a rut, that is where you will be. But we all need to broaden our horizons. We need to get out in the world and see what's going on in it, get to know people better, and be open and listen. Seek to understand first before being understood.
I mean, it's incredible how the principles of nonviolence that I know are rooted in your organization and were put forth by Dr. King really apply so much right now. I mean, in a time, we talked about this in the first segment, that our country is so polarized and so divided. I mean, if ever there was a moment when we needed to adhere and utilize these principles, now is the time.
Yes, and I think one of the principles refers to checking your own motives. So it is easy to say that the opponent won't listen or the opponent doesn't understand, but they're saying the same thing about you. And so to sit down and have a conversation and to try to engage. You know, Dr. King's nonviolent philosophy and his 6 principles for social change, they're really good debate tactics. I mean, if you were on a debating team, you had to learn a position, you had to be able to argue it and articulate it as if it was your position yourself. And so getting to know where other people are coming from different viewpoints, it will help bridge the divides. I'm not saying to change your viewpoint or that a viewpoint is wrong, but at some point, this is what we know. We live in a democracy. We have a two-party system that by nature is divisive. Diversity is by nature divisive. So it takes us kind of going against the grain and really paying attention to it so we're able to bridge divides and live in peace together and pull in the same direction moving forward.
That's really what it boils down to, is coming to a place where our country can come together again and ensure that we can work together as we move forward, that things aren't so partisan and so divided because of our news silos or political parties, but we're finding issues that we can really come together on. And that's the place to start, is finding some common ground and then being able to move forward.
And it usually happens when we get in a crisis, right? When in a crisis, everybody calms down. But it's important to look at, we talked about the reflections, and one of the recent character strengths that we reflected on was perspective. And we talked about planting a hickory tree. When does a hickory tree bear fruit? In about 200 to 250 years. Wow. That gives you a sense how long the arc of history is. It's not a straight bend. We have to keep tugging on it. You and I serve together in the Department of Veterans Affairs. Those decisions that we make as a nation matter. At one point, under the administration of Barack Obama, he was caring for the children of a Civil War veteran. Yes. So the decisions from Abraham Lincoln were being executed today. The decisions that we all make as a nation in this democracy, our leaders and our citizens, will be bearing fruit many, many years to come, centuries to come, in fact.
And that's important to keep in mind, is being patient and never giving up, right? Never giving up at perfecting our democracy and perfecting our country and the opportunities and the equality that we have to ensure. Tell us a little bit about where our viewers can go to find out more about faith and politics.
You can come and look at our website. We are at www.faithandpolitics.org. We also have a Facebook page. We are on Twitter and Instagram as well. And this year's pilgrimage is focused on aspirations of youth, then and now. It will be March 6th through 8th in Alabama. We'll be privileged to join Brian Stevenson, founder of the Equal Justice Initiative and visionary for both the Legacy Museum and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, known as the Lynching Memorial. We'll be joined by a number of civil rights icons. We are also learning the history of all the civil rights cases. It will be absolutely wonderful, so stay tuned.
Well, thank you, Joan, for being with us this evening, and thank you for tuning in. And we will leave with a Dr. King quote: "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Thank you for joining us. Good night.